to today's weekly webcast. For those of you from Gentian, this is supplanting our normal Wednesday webcast, which will go to every 2 weeks. But we've had a wonderful series we have here. So what I'd like to do today, without any further ado, is really introduce my two great friends, two great colleagues who are phenomenal in the industry. We're really gracious to have them with us. But I'd like to introduce Tim Freeze and David Adams. Tim's going to say a few things to open up today. So without further ado, I'll introduce Tim.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Welcome, everybody, to part 3 of our health and wealth webinar series. I'm Tim Freeze, and my team and I work out of Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Today, we're going to talk about nutrition, and I think it's going to be a real highlight of the series. Chris is going to be introducing Nicole in a few minutes, so I won't steal any of their thunder. But I would like to visit a question that you might be having, and that is really, why is my financial advisory team bringing us, health webinars and health content? And, Chris and David and I have been in the investment and financial planning business for many, many years and working with clients, and we collaborate with each other all the time about our practices and how to better serve our clients. And the more we learn from each other, the more we learn from our clients, the more clearly we understand it's not all about money. There's much more to the pursuit of true wealth and living a happy, fulfilling, meaningful life than just the money part. We all define success differently in our lives, and as we go through that, we have to ask ourselves the question, which is, what is it that we value more than money? Is it family? Is it friends? Is it faith, health? Is it experiences? Really, our clients have told us all of these things are more important than money itself. And, the events of 2020 have really given us an opportunity to reflect more intentionally on these priorities. So over the past few weeks, our focus has been on health, obviously. And a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Gladden talked to us about optimizing health and human performance and longevity. And last week, Dr. Lehrman talked to us about getting healthy from a mental standpoint in these crazy times. And I'm really excited to hear today from Nicole about how important nutrition is in our lives. So now I'm going to turn it over to my great friend, David Adams. David?
Thank you, Tim. So David here from Nashville, Tennessee, welcoming all my clients again for this third session, our wellness series, as Tim mentioned. I'm also drinking my green drink just to impress our speaker today. Try to be the teacher's pet before Chris tries to steal my thunder. There it is. Just kidding. I'm just overcompensating for the bowl of cereal I just ate for breakfast, let's be honest. Anyway, as Tim mentioned about why the 3 advisory teams, I just wanted to express how blessed I am to collaborate with 2 other like-minded individuals who see the bigger picture outside of just the crazy stock market and the media and the news and all the other noise. And more importantly, just proud to call both Chris and Tim dear friends. Now, nutrition is such an important part of the equation, and that's no surprise. It's also one of the hardest disciplines to follow, and especially in our country where a lot of times food can actually become a sport. So anyway, I hope you find some good tips today. We look forward to taking any of your questions towards the end. There's a Q&A button at the bottom. We will be monitoring that throughout today's session. The one thing Chris mentioned in our prep yesterday, that may be the guest speaker today, Nicole, who's going to in a second. She can help us get rid of our COVID-15. Great joke, I know. You're welcome for that. That being said, Chris will now say a few words and introduce our guest speaker.
Well, thank you, David and Tim. I appreciate it. It's nice to have both of they're one of the top practices in the nation as well. So it's great to collaborate. We're honored, we're blessed, and we're grateful that they decided to work with us. Today really is a continuing series for us. And we looked at this as well, as David and Tim have both alluded to and said. We typically have 4 keys. And for me, it's faith, family, health, and business family. So one of my great mentors, Lee Brower and Dan Sullivan, actually 2 of them said, puts her own oxygen mask on first. So for instance, if you don't have health, you can't take any of your other 4 keys. So for us in this case here, if you are what you eat, then the person we're bringing on, Nicole, now is going to be just an absolutely super important, let's say, component to our program here. So I'm super excited. I got about 475 questions I've written down already so far. So I might not talk a lot beforehand, but I will probably just start bringing up question after question for you, because I've got plenty, which is great. But the cool thing about it, you may have heard of the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm not sure if any of you have. There's this thing we have in Milwaukee called baseball. I know it's foreign to most of you right now. There's an MVP there as well. There's, you know, some great people on this team. But the person behind the team for nutrition is their nutritionist, and she's Nicole Kerneen. She actually has been fantastic. She's been in the business for 20 years. So she is a trained and certified sports nutritionist. So the cool thing about her is she actually understands what it takes for performance as well. So when asking her these questions, she kind of has an extra education and a really experience in this area as well for us to be able to use. So she's been with the Brewers for 9 years, and she has Way of Life as her nutritional fitness practice that helps individuals, families, and corporations and teams find a balanced and healthy lifestyle. Now, here's an interesting thing. She has a podcast recently as well called Between Two Pastries. So if you see her, she may have just finished a pastry. She may be starting a pastry after the program, but the program will be between the 2 pastries, which is pretty cool. But that's her. We're going to give you that as well. We'd like to, if you'd like to. She's fantastic. You're going to find she's a great speaker. She's got a bunch of great information here. But we want to also make sure there's some other resources you can find for her as well. We'll send all that out ahead. So without further ado, Nicole, what I'd like to do is introduce you and bring you on as our featured speaker. She'll talk for probably 15 or 20 minutes, give us some great information, and then we'll be able to start with some of the questions that might actually pertain to what you like and need. So Nicole, if I may introduce you.
Sure.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I think this is so wonderful. And I always appreciate when people are really interested in, again, looking into nutrition and doing something a little bit more comprehensive. So I really love that what your company is offering to your people. I think it's really great. So cool. Yes. So food is fuel. If there's ever a time to be on purpose with how we're eating, it is most certainly now. So today we're definitely talk a little bit about, how we can feel healthy, how we can be healthier, I guess you can say, and, feel, vital essentially. A little bit of my background and kind of what got me into doing this sort of work. I was actually inspired at a very young age, and I didn't know that what I wanted to do actually existed, but I had some really, really great teachers in high school that had kind of paved my path a little bit and guided me in the right direction. So I always knew I wanted to work with nutrition. I am a dancer, and so I was very, very aware of the relationship between intake and how your body physically feels. Also had a lot of trauma in my life too, and I also understood then as well that you can also have disordered eating when you have trauma in your life. And so I just thought, after realizing all of this cumulatively, that I thought, okay, I really want to dig deep into this and provide as much as I can for my clientele. And I've been extremely blessed in my practice to work with so many different types of people. It's amazing what people will walk in desiring to do and what the actual final product ends up being. So it's really quite wonderful. So anyway, thank you again for having me. So in this environment in particular, which has been such an interesting, strange, dynamic time for us all, immunity in general is really king right now. And it seems like people are always wanting to know, what can I do to like boost immunity or work with that? And, it's something that I think people just think that they can do. Either they just start eating an apple a day and they boost their immunity, or, stuff like that. And really what it is it's it takes a lot more than just that. And I think that that's what we want to really talk about today too. So again, how can you actually improve immunity, which in turn improves everything else essentially, right? Good health, and you feel better, you have more energy, you sleep better. That's a huge one. So inflammation, first and foremost, that's really the foundation of everything. So it's the foundation just as far as really where most of our ailments actually come from. And inflammation can start, my gosh, inflammation starts years and years before it can usually even start presenting. So inflammation is one. Gut health, really, really, really important piece. And people also don't understand either that our gut health actually determines our overall health in general and really does the most with fighting inflammation. So this is really, really important to kind of note. And it's something that we tend to just sort of bypass. And then last piece to this whole equation too is stress. So stress probably has the most effect on all of these things, as well as our health in general. So it's everything. It can even be positive stress, to be completely honest. Your body actually doesn't really know the difference sometimes. So that's important to kind of understand too. So again, it can be work stress, it can be home stress, it can be amazing stress, you know, I mean, all kinds of different things. Lack of sleep, which is huge. Sleep cycles are huge for people actually. So that's a really, really big one, and something that we'll talk a little bit more about today too. Other forms of stress, with some people don't actually realize, would be too much exercise. So looking into that a little bit. And of course, on the other end of the spectrum, not enough exercise, right? In addition to that, you know, poor diet, alcohol, sugar, all of these types of things can compound into what's called stress and create just a mess in your gut in general, and then therefore leads to inflammation, and therefore leads to just not feeling well in general. So it's a lot to kind of unpack. So when we talk about inflammation, couple of cool stories that that I've been able to actually see with a lot of my clients and even some of my players. I think one of the most rewarding things to see when I'm working with the team is because I'm also in charge of all of the minor league teams as well. I usually have to travel to these different, you know, camps, and as well as see everybody at spring training, which is awesome. It's like homecoming. Everybody gets super excited, and like they talk about their summer, right? Their off season. What did you do? You know, that kind of thing. It's super fun. But anyway, that's where everybody kind of gets together. But throughout the year, I'm usually going to the different affiliates then and working with individuals. So I'm seeing these kids from when they're first entering our affiliate till hopefully they make it to the majors, you know, which is really wonderful to actually watch people's careers kind of go through. So I have to say that my biggest joy is seeing someone that's in kind of our A league or farm league, if you will, and seeing them actually make it to the majors, and seeing that nutrition played such a huge piece in what they did, because, you know, we get a lot of these guys too who come from a lot of different backgrounds. Some of these guys are just super skinny. we gotta, you know, help them do kind of a lot of different things. And, you know, when they're coming in too at 18, 19, 20 years old, like, you know, they don't know a lot of this stuff. So it's really fun when they can latch onto it, carry it on through their life, but also they really made that connection that, oh my gosh, you know, everything that you taught me, even though I hated to do it at the time, I realized how much that paid off. So point being is when you're talking about nutrition is important when you're consistent at it. It's what you do day in and day out on a very regular basis that ultimately determines your health, period. It's not, you know, what happens once in a while, or, you know, and that's really important to kind of understand, because in my practice too, I'm always helping people achieve balance. Balance is the key to everything. It's not being on one end of the spectrum and the other end of the spectrum. It's really finding your balance of how you operate, what you like to do, what you like to eat, your lifestyle, all of that. It's really, really important. We can achieve optimal health by doing that. We don't have to be on one end of the spectrum where it's just only eating certain things. It just doesn't have to be that way. So when we're talking about inflammation and we're talking about gut, but just overall inflammation in general, what can increase inflammation? So we talked about alcohol can increase inflammation. Too much sugar can increase inflammation in our body. A lot of times, certain things that we'll eat, like fried foods, those kinds of things, trans fatty acids. We've taken a lot of trans fats out of our products recently, but what you'll find though, and this is important to kind of understand, that even if you are, eating something from a bag or whatever it might be, it's important to note that if there's any hydrogenated oil in there, any partially hydrogenated oil in there, to really understand that that's still a form of a trans fatty acid. And so again, we have actually banned them in general. However, this is what people need to understand. They still are in the hydrogenated and partially hydrogenated oils, and those have not gone away for a lot of different reasons. And so it's just important to kind of understand that. So how companies can actually get away with that is because they can say that per serving, there is no trans fats per serving. However, I like to use the example that if someone's eating an Oreo cookie, they're not eating one Oreo cookie. Usually they're eating a sleeve. I'm just saying that may not always be the case, but I'm saying it's common, it's common. And so if you're eating a sleeve, or it's even just exactly, a couple of handfuls, whatever, now you're eating a couple servings. So therefore you're actually getting trans fatty acids. And this is what's really important to understand. Again, if you have that every once in a while, you're fine. Trust me. It's what you do. If you're having a sleeve every day, we may need to talk about that. But so that's that type of thing that creates that inflammation in your body. Things that really help combat it, though, when we're looking on the other end is, okay, what foods actually really help combat it? Well, a couple things that you can actually do is wherever you can add spices in your day. So turmeric is kind of the big one, cumin, cinnamon, nutmeg, those types of things. Wherever you can add those into your day, that is hands down going to contribute to a massive amount of anti-inflammatory elements into your gut. And what has been proven, which is really nice, is that it only takes about a quarter teaspoon of that a day, just a day, to actually have effects on your inflammation, which is super powerful. But if you end up using these spices throughout your day for different things, you're obviously you continue to expose your gut, expose your body, your cells, everything to this. You're going to really help yourself with reducing a lot of that inflammation. So it can be quite easily done. I had a client one time who decided that she took a course that I did, and I had a slide that had about 12 different spices on it that people can use for anti-inflammatory. And she decided to make a smoothie and put all 12 spices in her smoothie. And I was like, okay, that's not what I'm recommending, but if that's something you want to do, that's great. Was more concerned about the taste for her. But at any rate, that is something you can do. And the smart part about putting it in the smoothie is that it really masks a lot of the flavor. So if there are some things that you don't particularly like, the best part of it is putting into a smoothie and getting it in. Which also leads me then to like proper gut health. And we're talking about absorbability and bioavailability of what you're taking in. This is really huge. So, if your gut has been compromised for various reasons, and really, when I say that, it's what has it been exposed to over the course of the years. Medications can kind of offset our gut flora, if you will, which is the good bacteria that's in our gut. You know, if we happen to be on a bout of an antibiotic, obviously that's going to completely change our gut flora. You know, these are things that we have to kind of be aware of, and then also know how we can combat. So when we have these things that are interrupting that, we also have a gut lining that's inflamed. And when we have a gut lining that's inflamed, we're actually not going to be absorbing things as efficiently anymore. And so, and as we age through the life cycle, we have less and less and less of certain enzymes being produced in our gut sometimes to help us with absorbability and digestion and those types of things. So it's looking at, okay, how do I bring those back? Because we really can. The other thing that happens too as we age is we have less amount of vitamin B12 in our system. And so without vitamin B12 as well, we're not able to absorb things quite as well. So this is all really important just to note. The good part is that there's so much we can do around this. I think at one point, you know, before a lot of this research came out, it was just sort of like, well, this is just what's happening. This is just what it is. And we had to, you know, feel like we had to accept it. But nutrition is just super powerful, and how you take it in is even that much more powerful. So if you have a gut that's a little compromised, and maybe you know by your digestion or how you feel after a meal, or, you know, there's different things that you can just tell, even just by how you physically feel. You know, having a smoothie or having more of a broken down type of a drink, or more of a cooked type of a vegetable or what have you, is one way to make it a little bit more easily for your body to absorb that nutrition. And so that's why when I bring up the smoothie, I bring it up that way, because you can throw in a couple handfuls of spinach. You can use, if you don't have a dairy issue, you know, like a Greek yogurt, which has a lot of great protein to it. So that can be your protein, you know, piece. You can add then a bunch of other anti-inflammatory fruits to that. You know, your berries, first and foremost, are probably your absolute best anti-inflammatory fruit out there. All berries, including cranberries. I'm a huge fan of throwing frozen cranberries into smoothies. Highly, highly recommend it. It's one of those things where you're probably not going to have a cranberry on your own unless you're going ahead and putting a lot of sugar on it, making it into some sort of jello mold, or, you know, whatever we do, you know, with that, making a relish, you know, whatever, that's fine. But it's a little, you know, it's a little tart. But when you actually throw it into a smoothie like that, it's amazing how, you don't really taste that, but you're getting all of the fantastic benefits this gives you. And again, it's because like the other berries, you know, kind of mask that. It has a nice blend. It's like a nice bright flavor. Anyway, experiment with that, because it's really, really good. But this is also where you can add in, like we talked about, some of those anti-inflammatory spices to that too. You know, so experiment with some of those things that you might want to put in. Even if you put in some cinnamon and some nutmeg, some, you know, other type of like a sweeter spice of some sort. A lot of times it's going to get masked in there anyway, but you're giving yourself so much more. And that gut lining is going to be able to absorb that 1,000% more than if you were just to eat that, you know, as a whole food. So keep that in mind. That's one way to help yourself absorb a little bit more if you're kind of struggling a little bit. And having a smoothie a day would be a nice step to start getting that gut to respond a little bit better too. So that's definitely one way. Other things that we can do too is taking in things that have more like pro and prebiotics to that. So that also helps to actually create more gut flora, more good gut flora. And again, when we're talking about this, I'll probably repeat this a couple more times even, it's what you do on a daily basis. So it's this constant exposure. It's not what you do at one meal. It's like, try to spread some of these concepts out throughout the day. So you're constantly allowing your gut to receive this stuff. So it's building and building and building upon it. This is what's really important. So when we're talking about some of this probiotic type of things, we're talking about things that are fermented in general. So I know that we have a kombucha fan out there, or two or three, and kombucha is fantastic. That's certainly one way that you can get your probiotics in as well. Other fermented things, sauerkraut, and actually there's been a great study out there that it only takes 2 tablespoons of sauerkraut a day to inoculate your gut enough to produce good bacteria. So whether you like sauerkraut, whether you can tolerate it or not, I mean, honestly, 2 tablespoons a day, I mean, you could get that down pretty simply. But it's an easy one and it's affordable, you know, that's the other nice thing too. So again, you have to decide for yourself, what can you do on a daily basis? And that's really one of the takeaways. When you're thinking about these things, I want you to be making a mental note. What do I know for sure I can start doing on a daily basis? And then you build from there in general. The other piece to help with gut health too would be fiber. I cannot stress fiber enough. Fiber is, I swear fiber is almost the cure-all for so many things, but we need to make sure that we're spreading our fiber out again throughout the day too. We don't want these large amounts one time of the day and then we're hardly taking anything in the rest of the day. When we take in small amounts, it's easier for our body to actually take in and digest, because I know that can be an issue for those that maybe haven't taken in a lot of fiber at one time. But fiber does a lot of different things. It feeds that good bacteria, number one. It also helps to absorb cholesterol and any extra fatty acid that doesn't belong there. So it clears out your gut of that, and it clears out your arteries of that. So it also helps to kind of keep your lipid levels down, which again is another inflammatory factor. So getting in as much fiber as you possibly can. I usually tell people to aim for 30 grams a day, but to be honest, 45, 50 grams a day is fantastic for you. So keep that in mind. And again, think about ways you can give yourself some fiber spread throughout the day. So again, your berries are going to be super high in fiber. Cranberries, super high in fiber. You want to get it from more natural foods. The thing is a lot of these products that kind of tout that they're high fiber and that, you got to be really skeptical of those, because what they're doing is they're adding in really harsh fibers on the body. So harsh fibers, like, for example, this might be not the best example, but maybe some of you can call, I don't even know if they make them anymore, like a Fiber One bar. I don't even know if they make them anymore. I'm not up on some of those things, but you know, the Fiber One bar had like an inulin in them. They also had chicory root in those. Those are really 2 popular fibers that usually get pumped into some of these products that are out there. Those are really, really harsh on the system. And so a lot of times people will say like, whoa, you know, I had a Fiber One bar and it really made me go, kind of a thing. Yes, too much. So whenever it's stimulating you too much, where you're evacuating a little too quick, that's not what you want. And what happened there is that will also take your gut flora back out again. That's not what you want. So I just want to draw that to your attention too. So just be aware of those products, because they can be harsh. Some people respond differently than other people. So kind of keep that in mind, but can't say enough about fiber. So again, all your vegetables are going to have fiber in it. One more thing about fiber too, your beans are going to have a ton of fiber in it. They're also a source of protein. They're also a very low glycemic carbohydrate. And they're wonderful for you. And, you know, if you do struggle with breaking them down and you have a digestive issue around them, couple things that you can do. Canned beans are actually perfect because they're pressure cooked and they're held in that can and they're held with sodium. And that sodium actually helps to break down that enzyme that people find really hard to break down. So the longer that is kind of sitting there, the more that enzyme is broken down, it becomes more digestible, more absorbable, you get more benefit from it. So keep that in mind too. If you do make your own beans, which I like to do a lot, you soak them overnight. When you actually soak them overnight, that's also releasing that enzyme. And then when you boil them, it's releasing the enzyme again. And then to top it off even more, you add salt to it when you're boiling it, and that will extract that enzyme even more. So like I said, it's easy to kind of remove that. And the more that you introduce your body to it, the more you adapt to it. And a lot of times when we're responding certain ways with fiber in ways that make us feel uncomfortable, it's because our gut flora is out of whack. And so the more you expose yourself to these things, the less discomfort you will have from some of these foods. So I really do encourage that. And the other piece on this too is that, again, there was another amazing study that came out that proved that only 2 half-cup servings of beans in a week dropped your cholesterol by 30%. Again, pretty staggering, because a half a cup of beans it's literally like a handful, really isn't much. So that's something you can easily use as part of a side dish, throwing it in a salad, making even like a bean type of a salad, even with some vinegar in it, even more probiotic action to that, having that as a snack. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do, but that's just kind of I love mentioning that because it's well worth it. And so then the last piece too is in regards to the stress. So again, whatever you can do to kind of manage stress in that response. And again, it's finding your balance around that. And one of the things that I work a lot with clients and around stress too. I also have a lot of clients that deal with, anxiety issues, sleep issues, a lot of different things. And so we work on creating some of these pauses, if you will, into their day. So super big fan of breath work. And when I talk about breath work, what I'm talking about is simply the pause. So whether you are about to eat, and a lot of times we eat really frazzled, like I think of sometimes we're eating through meetings, we're eating while we're watching something and we're getting really upset. And so then we're eating faster. And, all of these things really disrupt actually our own digestion and our own body's ability to produce what's needed, because it goes into like a state of confusion. Like, oh my gosh, we're really mad. So we're over here and we've got blood going everywhere else and not in our gut. And it creates an issue. So if you can be really present with your meals, even so, taking a couple deep breaths before your meal will actually bring down that stress hormone for you instantly, literally instantly. And you'll actually digest your food way better too. And I recommend taking those breaths too, like if you're in the car or before you're transitioning into another meeting, anything like that to bring down that cortisol level is essentially what you want to do. And cortisol is that stress hormone that gets overproduced most often. I'm not sure how we're doing on time here. I'll just keep talking until someone cuts me off. If that's, I don't know. I'm asking.
No, you're fine still. It's
okay.
Perfect.
Great. So, the other things too, is when we're talking about all these different like fruits and vegetables, I think what's important too to note is that the more you can buy organic, the better. And the thing to kind of keep in mind is that you don't need everything to be organic. This is what's really important. So even my husband, he'll sometimes, if he goes grocery shopping or whatever, he'll come home and he'll have like organic bananas. I'm like, you don't need organic bananas, but it's the first thing he saw. So he just grabbed it, But that's the thing. Like, we don't need organic bananas or anything that has like a tough skin on it. So organic avocados, we don't need that. Organic oranges, grapefruit, we don't need that kind of thing. And the reason why is because these things don't even require pesticide. They're not things that bugs, rodents, and things are going for, if you will. So you don't need to go out and necessarily buy that. If that makes you feel more comfortable, by all means, it's perfectly fine. I just want you to understand there's certain things you don't have to. Certain things you absolutely positively, and I mean absolutely positively, do. And first and foremost would be all of your berries. You want and need to make sure you're buying organic berries. I can't stress that enough. It really, really makes a huge, huge difference. Because pesticide, unfortunately, has also been associated with a lot of our gut health and a lot of our inflammation. And pesticide, when it builds up, it actually builds up in our body fat tissue. And so if we're for some reason losing body fat, that also gets released into your bloodstream, creates a lot of problems. So just want to kind of draw that to your attention. So berries, hands down. Celery is another really big one because it is so permeable. It picks up on everything and then retains everything too. So that one's a really important one to note as well. And then the other one is any of your leafy greens. You absolutely want to buy organic leafy greens. Always, always, always. Cannot stress that enough. And you'll tell the difference between an organic leafy green and a not organic leafy green. You can actually taste that difference. And the other piece too that people don't realize are apples. Apples are also really need organic as much as possible, or from, if you know an apple, store or what have you, or if you have your own apple tree, definitely what you're looking for there. So Those are a couple of things with organics in general. The other thing with organic too, and this is another one that people often don't realize, is whenever you're going to be purchasing like grains, so quinoa in particular, any other type of whole grain, organic is the way you want to go. And again, this is associated with that pesticide and how it responds to our gut. So, you know, people will, it's interesting because people will go to Europe, Italy in particular, and they have a gluten sensitivity, but when they go to Europe, they can handle it. And so the difference is because our wheat is ridiculously different here than it is in Italy. I mean, it's just taken care of so much better over there, unfortunately. But it is the way it is. So the more you can get organic, the better off your body will be able to handle all of that. And there's just, again, when we're talking about stress, the one thing to combat stress is getting enough B vitamins. And B vitamins are used up at such a rapid rate when we're under any kind of stress period. And B vitamins are found in our grains. And that is the biggest item that holds those B vitamins that we so desperately need. We can't almost supplement enough to tell you the truth with that. So you really want to make sure that you're consuming things that have B vitamins throughout your day, because I'm telling you, the minute that stress comes up, your body's using those like crazy. So do keep that in mind. And that will also help to cut down that cortisol level too, so you are able to sleep better. And that's another issue as well, is just that cortisol level remains too high then as you're going into the evening, and people are not able to get into that REM sleep. And that REM sleep, even though it's what, 20 minutes to an hour of our whole sleep night, is the most restorative place of sleep that there is. And if we're not getting into that area, then we're waking up with higher cortisol levels than we need, and then the bad cycle starts all over again. And higher levels creates that inflammation, also inhibits your body to burn body fat for energy too, which is also something we want to be just burning body fat all the time, and we can't do that when our cortisol levels are way too high. So again, just some food for thought, to think about in regards to some of these things. And then one last piece on the nutrition piece, as well as stress and cortisol, is the amount of caffeine that you take in. So caffeine can be pretty dangerous, and it's definitely an issue in baseball. That's for sure. They get a big old talk on caffeine every year. Just because of the sleep cycles, like those poor boys, no one's sleeping. That's the issue, and we can't recover. Then we need everybody, being able to perform optimally. So this is a big topic we talk about all the time, and we laugh. And there's a particular couple of characters that make their love of caffeine known to me regularly. It's very fun. But anyway, so keep this in mind. The timing of when you take in caffeine is what's really important. So you want to make sure that if you're going to have caffeine at all, you want to get it in the morning, call it a day, because cortisol, it peaks at 9 a.m. for all of us. And then it starts slowly coming down and then preparing you for sleep. That's the whole concept of it. Cortisol is actually what wakes us up. It's part of the waking up hormone that happens. And that happens around 4 a.m. is when it starts to kind of get into that system, peaks at 9. The issue with caffeine is that when you take caffeine in, you're instantly increasing that cortisol again. So if you're having, coffee in the morning, if you're having a caffeinated beverage in the early afternoon, then maybe you're having another one in the evening, you're constantly putting that cortisol up into your system. So that's going to create a problem, not only for sleep, but also for, stress and body fat usage. And also when cortisol is too high, it likes to chew away at your muscle mass too. Anyway, all these little interesting facts, but it's important to kind of note. The other thing about caffeine is that it has a half-life, which means what you took in at 9 a.m. is still in your system, 50% of that at 3 p.m., which also means whatever you take in at 2 or 3 p.m. is in your system by 9 p.m. And if you're trying to fall asleep, it's going to it's going to cause a problem. So I just want to keep that in mind too.
Well, thank you, Nicole. I think we can go into some questions, and we have a few from some of the listeners. And I had a question or a topic that I know I received from a client beforehand. It's about brain health.
Yes.
And I've shared with some of my clients. Unfortunately, my mother has dealt with some Alzheimer's and is dealing with that. And so what are some things, and we have some other clients going through the same thing with their parents. What are some things we can do to delay or prevent memory loss and just to help enhance overall brain health, whether it's through supplements and just in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So inflammation is first off completely. So getting that, getting into a good pattern of consuming some of these things that help with anti-inflammation, which corrects your gut, which everything else will in turn correct that for brain health. That is first and foremost, and we know that for lots of studies. The other thing to keep in mind too is making sure that you're consuming enough really good anti-inflammatory fats. First and foremost, omega-3 fatty acids. The issue with omega-3 fatty acids is that in particular, we're super low in this country. And we consume more omega-6s versus omega-3s, and we actually want that ratio to switch pretty dramatically, but we just don't take in enough omega-3s, and it's hard to get it through our food. You know, if you like sardines, that's one way. Not a lot of people like sardines, some people are allergic to fish, so salmon, trout, and orange roughy are kind of your highest omega-3 fatty acid fish that's out there. So if you like those, it's advised that you get in about 3 servings in the course of a week. So that also will help with that. Other things that have omega-3s in, and again, these are also anti-inflammatory agents, walnuts first, and flax meal. And I don't say flax seed, I do say flax meal because you actually don't absorb or break down flax seed at all. So you take in flaxseed and it's not doing anything for you. It's literally just going right in and coming right out. So you want to make sure you have flax meal in order to absorb that. The thing about the plant-based omega-3s though is that they come in the form of ALA, and ALA has to be converted. And so through that conversion, we lose a lot of that omega-3. So we're just getting such a small amount from those sources. So they're beneficial, but we don't get enough. Yes.
There's a couple other questions. So I've got about 412. I'll consolidate that because I know that's probably way too many. But as I go through, I mean, you said some great things. I got 2 or 3 pages of notes already that you said. You mentioned pre and probiotics, but I think one of the things you look at is there's actually been some studies that have come out that the gut may actually be the brain of the body. Strangely enough, they're finding because it tends to dictate more than the brain actually does. We've got that a little backwards. Is that right? Yep. Are you finding that as well?
Oh,
okay.
Positively. But there's a huge connection to that positively. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So feeling well is good on those. That's awesome. So the question I had for you too is, what about all these fad diets that are out there? So where you only eat this, you only eat that, there's just a bunch of different ideas about, the South Beach to this. Is there anything that you can say about this? I know that's a lot of topic, but in general, are there any guidelines when it comes to those kind of minuscule absolute diets?
I think what's really important to note is that they are fad. So meaning they're short term, they're not long term. They're all missing a lot of different nutrients when you're doing them, because most of the time you're eliminating entire food groups, and that is actually part of the problem. So it is something that I really never support, if you will. Usually I'm combating that more than anything else. So,
right.
But yeah, that's what's important is that, people have to understand that that's what they are. They're fad. There's lots of ways to get from point A to point Z, and you don't have to do it in a drastic way.
Yeah, that's good to know as well. I think one of the things too, so when you're looking at those, it is, and a ton of people have this, and you mentioned this on our pre-call as well, which is great. If you have a non-healthy gut or you don't accept foods as well, you actually have different nutrition absorbed by the way you prepare them, which I thought was a great point. Let's say eating kale straight up, which has a high ANDI index, you know, a high nutrient density index, but eating it straight up is, for some people, it's just, you're not going to get any nutrients out of it. You actually have to cook it or blend it. Is that right? Is that a concept?
It's very true. It's very true. And some people just don't tolerate kale or some of the tougher greens very well at all. So that's a really good time then to put those in the blender, you know, to add them to your smoothie or to cook them down enough. And so, you know, when you're, especially with some of those leafy greens, we actually absorb more iron from like the spinach if we saute it or lightly steam it than having it raw. That's also another thing to kind of note. You know, so we're going to get some different things depending on how we're cooking something. So same with what we talked about, kind of the broccoli, the Brussels sprout, the cauliflower, you know, that family of things. We do much better when we cook those, obviously. We can also tolerate them raw, but what I would recommend with that is that you want to cut it into really small, you want to cut it into very small pieces raw. You will actually absorb more from that because they're already going to be cut. So the digestive piece doesn't have to break so much down, basically. And what we're finding is that there are some really, really powerful antioxidant, anti-cancerous elements to raw broccoli and cauliflower, as well as, again, powerful things when you cook them. So we kind of always want a combination of some raw, some cooked things. It's just making it work for you. So cutting things into tiny, tiny pieces, breaking them down, cutting down that cellulose, that's what you're trying to do, essentially is what you want to do, and that will enhance your absorption.
That's awesome. I know somebody made sort of a comment that they heard that Justin Verlander gets 10 to 12 hours of night of sleep. It's too much probably for the average person, not making a ton of money, but do you think that sleep I've actually read a lot as well that sleep heavily affects performance of professional athletes. So they get as much as they can in many cases.
Yes.
But then I've also heard, I've got a good friend, Sean, who actually was a pro pitcher for 9 years, telling everyone, I said, so what do people really do after the game? Well, I'm going to say that Doritos, Domino's, and Taco Bell and Fortnite are all fairly common. So, Amanda, you're in repair mode a lot as well. Can you speak to any of those?
Yeah, I speak to that more on a minor league level when those boys are trying to grow up a little bit. But, you know, the major league level, those guys know where it's at. I mean, sure, they're probably staying up until 2, 3 in the morning playing video games. Not going to lie about that.
Okay.
Okay. But we have specific things that we do feed them post game. And then we also have, most of them have specific things that they actually eat before they go to bed because they are constantly recovering. So we'll also have them sleep. And you've got some guys who will literally go to bed an hour after the game, but it's most of the time they're staying up a little bit. We'll have them sleep, usually set their alarm early, get up, eat something. So usually we're having them eat a bar, something inside their nightstand, and then they go back to sleep for another couple hours, and then they have another breakfast before they come to the to the clubhouse, and then they eat again.
Oh, nice.
But we have to for the recovery. Yeah.
Nicole, question. What about intermittent fasting? I hear about that a lot. And speaking of breakfast, I love breakfast and have it every morning, but I know some people that are doing like from after dinner until maybe noon the next day, not eating and only eating from maybe noon to 7 and consuming 3 meals throughout that period. And so is that kind of, in your opinion, more of a fad, or is there some validity to that?
It actually, so this is such a loaded question. And I don't know how to condense an answer, to be completely honest. So again, this is another thing that I'm not a fan of for so many reasons. And I don't want to really spend too much time getting into all of the reasons for that. I think the question really is, why does someone want to do that? What are they thinking that they're benefiting from when they're doing that? I think that's first and foremost. When it comes to a very active person, someone who's an athlete, for sure an athlete, it is not something an athlete needs to be doing, should be doing. This is not remotely what they should be doing, period. If you are more of a sedentary person, it's okay, but we're still dealing with a couple things that can happen in there. It also, the evidence is not conclusive at all, and there is not enough study on it, period. when we're looking at some different things. There has been some work done that we're looking into in regards to killing cancer cells. But that is also still being looked at and really only working with, cancer patients in general. So it's probably about as much as I want to say on the subject. There's a lot more, but there's so many dynamics of that. It's, like I said, that's kind of a presentation in and of itself.
That's awesome. Thank you. I know that's a tough one. The question I think that I have as well is, so a lot of our clients are, say, 65 and over, so 65 to 80. So eating for performance, eating that many meals is probably not their goal. So it might actually be on the other side of the equation. How does nutrition change as I age from 65 to 75 to 85? What's the difference at that point? What would be the biggest benefit?
So the biggest benefit is, again, focusing on these anti-inflammatory things, but also focusing on how you can increase your absorbability of these types of foods. So again, maybe including that smoothie in a day, maybe having more vegetables, but maybe more lightly cooking them so you're absorbing more, so your body doesn't have to work so hard to break some of that down. It's that kind of thing. We also, again, we lose and start not producing as much B12 anymore. So sometimes you have to keep an eye on your B12 rate and potentially even start supplementing with B12 too, which is easy to do in general. Taking in the omega-3 fatty acids, so getting that in a supplement form, if you don't like a lot of these other things, hands down is what's going to be beneficial for you. So that's the type of thing too. Also, looking at where vitamin D levels stand too, and I didn't mention this, but vitamin D has a lot to do with inflammation in the body too. It also has a lot to do with being able to absorb. It has a lot to do with gut lining health, and it also has a lot to do with our mental health as far as depression goes too. Moods, sleep, it disrupts everything, and it also makes your joints hurt real bad. So, making sure that we have enough vitamin D coming in as well. And that's not something that, again, that's another area we don't really get a whole lot of.
Question, Nicole. So best supplements, and I know it varies by every person, and what I've heard consistently from holistic doctors and other people in your field has been things like fish oils, a probiotic, vitamin D, because a lot of us don't have enough exposure to the sun, vitamin B, and maybe a multivitamin and smoothie each day, that sort of thing. What else? Is there anything else that you would say outside of those that's kind of a go-to that, not everybody, but maybe almost everybody should implement on a daily basis, supplement-wise?
Those really are kind of the big heavy hitters right there. And honestly, there really isn't anything else that you can possibly get from a pill, because the issue is this: our supplement industry is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. So the availability of even what they say is in the product is so questionable. And what we're finding is too, like a lot of these companies can actually get tested. So they can get tested for bioavailability, they can get tested for purity, they can get tested for what they say is in the product is actually in the product. So some companies actually spend the money and say, yes, I'm ready to be vulnerable, put my product out there and have it tested. So, those companies are great. And a lot of times they'll do it and they're not meeting what they say that they're doing. So we have to be really, really careful where we're getting this stuff from. They can't mess up a B complex, period. Omega-3s are another one that is a little bit difficult to mess up. There are a couple better companies out there, but that's a tough one too. Vitamin D, you can't mess vitamin D up. These are almost sort of safer bets, if you will, that you're not going to be taking, that you're actually going to be getting what they say is in there, and you're not taking in any other impurities. We have to be really, really careful with supplements in general, but also like protein powders. That is a big racket. Oh my gosh, it's awful. And so many of those are tainted with so much stuff. So we're finding anabolic steroids, we're finding arsenic, we're finding all kinds of different impurities that are in there because of where they're coming from, where we're importing some of this stuff as well. So anyway, it's just a tricky thing.
So what you're saying, when it comes to those powdered proteins, no way. I didn't know what.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. See, yes. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good, Tim.
How do we
Nicole,
meet?
I've got a quick question for you.
Sure.
So many good ideas, and
Great.
and I think related to David's, the supplement. How do you put this into practice? I mean, I wrote down a million things, but in terms of how do you keep track of it, and how do you kind of ensure? And is there a way to kind of test where you are, what you're deficient in? And that's one question, and another one, and kind of related to the protein powder and stuff. Because every once in a while do a protein, or not a protein powder, but
Sure.
a meal replacement shake.
Mhm,
Because lunch gets squeezed and it's nice. Are there any healthy ones out there, or ones that you would recommend, or do you just say completely avoid that?
Well, again, that's it's such a hard one to kind of answer in general. There is one. The thing is this, and this is the other thing when it comes down to this. So I think it's like Garden of Life. They made like a raw meal or something like that. They have like 3 versions of it. I'm just giving you this example because it's important to understand. They have 3 versions of it. 2 versions didn't make it when they got tested for all these things, and only 1 version did. So it's one of those things. And I think it's just like the raw meal sport version, I think it is. And then that one worked out okay. So that's one of the ones that I would recommend. There was a product out there called EAS Nutrition that is no longer. They were probably one of the best as far as purity. They are no longer. So how can you investigate some of this stuff yourself? So if you choose to go to the website, I think it's called, it's NSF Sport. So it's NSF certified for sport. What you can do is go to that website. You can literally look at any protein powder, just, throw in like a whey protein or meal replacement, see what pops up. Those all have been extensively tested. So guarantee there's not going to be any garbage in there. That would be the one thing I could direct for you.
Okay.
I feel very responsible, so I don't want to just throw names out, and you know what I mean? I don't ever want to mislead anyone.
I appreciate that. So a question I have as well, we didn't really touch on this, but how about GMOs? So when people are buying non-GMO, foods, is that an important portion as well? We talked about organics, but I know that's a big one at the store when you go there.
I think it's a great question. It has tendencies to be a little bit of a hot topic and a little bit of a blown up topic at the same time. So when it comes to GMOs, I would say the majority of our food is modified in some way, shape, or form. It's something that we have a hard time getting away from when we're looking at kind of the big picture here. So the more you can just buy from like a farmer's market or somebody that that grows this stuff on their own is always going to be the best bet, because you know where it's coming from in general. When we're talking about GMO in general, honestly, the one thing you want to get non-GMO is preferably corn and soy. And again, like a soybean and edamame, again, wonderful product in and of itself, as long as it's non-GMO.
Okay.
And same with tofu. Those would be my biggest things there. And it's another reason to buy organic, although some organics can be modified as well. And what I mean by that is when you see like those pieces of fruit that are like 5 servings, like an apple that looks like you could feed a family. Those are the things that have been modified, because they've become something that they were never intended to be. An apple should fit in your hand. Like you should almost be able to put touch your fingers. Same with like a potato in general. Like that's kind of one way that you would know if it was. So recently I had gone to a farmer's market and it was just fantastic. I should have taken a picture because you don't see this anymore. But I got strawberries. They were phenomenal, by the way. But the strawberries were like this big. I mean, they were, and so a real strawberry for a change, I mean, they're not supposed to be that big, that's not what they are, so keep that in mind.
Nicole,
Yes.
Quickly on the supplements, a couple that I keep seeing pop up that seem to be trendy now, but I think they're good. MCT oil for the brain, and then also collagen protein. I see that
Oh,
at
sure.
Whole Foods and area. What about those? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, MCT oil is used for a lot of different reasons. A lot of times if people can't absorb, they have a fatty acid issue where they're not absorbing things appropriately, then we use the MCTs. MCTs can also be used as extra energy. So again, depending on the gut health of that particular, and I'm speaking like for an athlete or for a patient, if you will, we might need to supplement with some MCT oils, which can work quite well. And then the other piece, I'm sorry, what was the other? I'm sorry, I got hooked on MCTs. I'm sorry.
It was collagen protein.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So collagen is great too. So again, there's a lot of different collagens out there. And I think this brand, I will say, because it has been tested and it's all good, but it's the Vital Proteins, it's called. Collagen, I'd probably say is one of your best bets to get. And that's a really nice supplement too, especially anybody who is active or anybody suffering with arthritis. Just as far as reducing that inflammation in the joints, it really, really does help. Again, if you are not a vegan, then, and by all means, even just, buying like a gelatin and, making, so like really, really big fan of tart cherry juice because of the fact that it is so anti-inflammatory. It also helps to increase our melatonin, and we lose melatonin as we age. And melatonin is also another element that raises when we're trying to go to sleep. So tart cherry juice has been extensively studied. We use it a ton in the ball team. And if you are an athlete, 16 ounces a day is really what's recommended. If you're not an athlete, 8 ounces a day is going to suit you quite well. You can have it at any point of the day. It doesn't make you sleepy. It doesn't work that way. But it does work on elevating your melatonin levels. But point blank is that if you wanted, you could make Jello out of gelatin and tart cherry juice. Fantastic snack, would be amazing for you because you're adding anti-inflammatory to anti-inflammatory, and you're just making this really easy thing. It takes 2 minutes to make. It's like no time. So anyway, that's just an idea of another way that you can get it instead of maybe buying like a Vital Protein or something.
So I have two last questions here. They come from the, and then we'll run here. I know we're running over time here, but one of them was a question of cow's milk versus almond milk. Does it make a big difference? That's one. Mm-hmm. I guess go ahead and ask that one. I'll ask the second one afterward.
Oh, sure. So it's a personal preference. So the thing about almond milk is that almond milk was really just a supplement. I mean, it literally is just a supplement. It's not giving any protein. It's not giving you really anything. All it is giving you magnesium, potassium, vitamin D, calcium. Cow's milk is actually a food. So cow's milk is great because, it has protein in it, it has carbohydrate in it, it has fat in it. It's actually fantastic for you. And if you can tolerate dairy, I highly recommend it.
And the same kind of question comes with, okay, go ahead, David.
Sorry, I was just going to say a question that we got earlier. I don't think we totally finished answering was how do we gauge gut health? For those of us to go and find out what is the current condition of our gut, how would we do that?
Well, I mean, your gut is going to have your own feedback. So again, how well are you digesting? How do you feel after meals? How much are you eliminating on a daily basis? What do your BMs look like? I think one thing is even just keeping track of that. You can't really get tested for your gut health. It really is kind of knowing what's going on. If you're sensing that something is going on, you're having some abdominal pain, if people complain of like bloating and then they think that they have a gut problem, they may not have a gut problem. We may just have to look at exactly what they're eating, and that's more or less the issue. Because otherwise the only way that you're going to know if you have like a celiac or if you have any other diseases, you get a biopsy. So that's not something you just want to go in and say, hey, let's test this, So you really can't. But what you can do is another factor in which you can monitor for yourself is getting your CRP levels tested. So CRP is your C-reactive protein, it's called. And that is really what sort of shows you overall of how your body is handling inflammation. It's a marker. It's something, it's another kind of extra thing you can just choose to look at if you choose to. So it's like if you go in for your routine, get a CRP done, and then when you go in 6 months later, get it done again. You know what I mean? Like, let's say you made a bunch of changes, then you go and test it again, and let's see if that's altered for you at all. So that's another way of looking at that.
Awesome.
So I'm not sure if that really answered your question, but there really isn't like a whole lot of testing you can do in regards to that. Okay.
There's different purported tests on it. But the other question too is this, like cage-free eggs versus just normal eggs. Is that a big deal? I know it's a big difference in price. Does that make a big difference in the quality of the egg?
In the nutrition? So, you know, gosh, this is a whole nother subject in and of itself.
Right.
I know. So just to kind of try to answer that really quick, I think what's really important is that it's not just cage free, it's also free range.
Free range.
So
okay.
Interesting, because it's awful how they treat these animals, but even cage free, they're not in a cage, but they're all in this really small confined space and they're still struggling. So that doesn't necessarily, but if they're free range, they have to specifically have a particular amount of range that they're roaming and eating from. Think about it this way. Don't mean to take it a step further, but it's worth it. Mm-hmm. You know, you're eating something that came from an animal that's super stressed out.
Right.
It's not going to have the same type and quality of nutrition, and we do absorb that. So again, getting farm fresh eggs wherever you possibly can. You know, and again, cage-free, organic if it's possible, because again, it just tells you the soil that they're eating from, and then free range is probably best.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Well, I'll stop with the questions now. There's a ton that we could still go through, and there's a bunch of great information. I know that that a lot of people have already responded with some great feedback. A couple of things that I want to end with. So I've got a client that also has been a client of yours for quite a while, and they say a lot of their health and nutrition is really based on your advice to them. So you've had a relationship for quite a while. You know who they are. We talked about it before.
I love them.
Yes, I know. They may be on the floor. They're there. I mean, they're there. They're just down the way. So I just want to say that's another really good one as well. But I guess that kind of leads to this too. There's 3 or 4 takeaways we'll put together here. But more importantly, if somebody wants to reach out to you and find more information, they can go to wayoflifenutrition.com. Is that how the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, they can do that. They can also just email me at nickrd@live.com and icrd@live.com. That's easy. And they can also just call me at 414-940-6662. That's my main business line. So awesome. Lots of ways to get in touch with me. So
that's awesome. And also if anybody likes pastries, but there's a webcast called Between Two Pastries that she also does. So the webcast of Between Two Pastries is good. And again, it's got some very specific information that's been new. I want to make sure that if you want to reach out and connect with her as well, it's a great way to do it. Well, I want to say thank you tremendously from our team, from our clients, nutrition, health, gratitude, the reducing of stress. This is all very important. Normally I start with going big, but I'll actually end with going big, which I think the gratitude that we have for you and what you do and you've dedicated your life for both ourselves, for the sports figures, for the clients that we have as well. We really appreciate you sharing that. That's tremendous. We'll reach out to you in many different ways. But I just want to make sure that you understand our gratitude. It's really been phenomenal. David, Tim, any last words?
Nicole, thank you so much. And we will post this video. We're going to put together a recording. We'll post it soon if you want to share it with loved ones. And I think I'm going to go try to eat a healthy lunch now. So thank you for that.
Very good. Awesome.
David was going to eat Lucky Charms. That was what he was going to eat.
Right.
Okay, easy, Chris.
That's all right. Well, once again, thank you. This ran a little bit over, but there's a bunch of great questions. We could continue on forever as well. Thank you tremendously, Nicole, David, Tim, Ashley, our whole team again for the wonderful, wonderful information we get today in our series. And we'll find different pieces along the way as well. And maybe we'll reach out to Nicole and get her back at some point in time, because it's really fantastic information, maybe on just a specific topic. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day, wonderful season. I know baseball is starting again here in a month or two. So everybody's probably trying to get back into season shape, I imagine. So your job is cut out for you right now.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well, Nicole. Awesome. All right. Thank you tremendously. Have a great week, everyone. We look forward to bringing more information, more specialists like Nicole to you in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.